The live has now begun. I ask all of you to please share the link with your friends, family, across your socials, on your statuses and stories. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to one and all from wherever in the world you may be watching this live. Greetings to one and all, and a warm welcome to today's live session. Groete vir een en almal, en 'n hartlik welkom by vandag se sessie. Litumeliso ubuhle, likamuhelo, e mofutu e kopano e kajeno. تحياتي للجمع وترحيبا حرانا في جلسة اليوم. Herkese selamlar ve bugünkü oturuma sıcak bir hoş geldiniz. This is Muhammed Vahed joining you from Welcome, coming live to you from Welcome, Free State. Firstly, I would like to thank each and every one of you for being here today and for taking out your time to attend this live. As well, this live will be for your own benefit, as well as for the benefit of the entire mankind. So once again, I do urge you to share this live to your friends, your family, and whichever socials you do have, your statuses on WhatsApp and your groups. And secondly, I ask that you do bear with me as my voice is not 100% due to me still recovering from a recent illness. So my voice may be a bit raspy, and for that I do apologize. So now, without any further ado, allow us to commence. So I will be your host for today as we join this live to discuss the current situation currently unfolding within Gaza-Palestine between the Palestinians and the Israelis. We'll be discussing the ongoing war and the oppression upon the Palestinians and the Gaza citizens. Now, as for the schedule for today, I will begin firstly with giving you a small talk and encouragement and introduction to the situation. And then this will be followed by our honorable guests who will be joining us. Each of them will be given roughly 30 to 45 minutes to answer pre-structured questions as well as questions from the viewers. So if you do happen to have any questions once the lives do commence, the interviews, then do not hesitate to put your questions down in the comment section, and they will be directed towards the guests. These interviews will go up until 6 p.m. where we will then be joined by our Maulana Mayet to give us a closing of prayer, and as well as some advices, and that will conclude today's event. I hope that each and every one of us can benefit from today, as well as stay present from now until the end. I know it may sound a bit lengthy, but you can only benefit from this live. So I do ask you once again to forward it to your friends, your family, and all of your connections. So now allow us to commence. Regarding the current situation in Gaza, in Palestine, it has been really sad to see the comments and the statements made by the world leaders regarding this situation which is currently unfolding within Gaza. However, we do applaud the just and good-hearted people of the world for standing up for what is right and for making their voices heard. And we urge you not to stop and only make your voices louder, as your voices have a major impact in how this plays out. So we do urge you to continue with your demonstrations and to continue posting about it on your social medias and in whatever other ways you may raise awareness on this genocide happening within Gaza. So once again, I do ask you to raise awareness by sending the link out to your family, your friends, across WhatsApp, across all your other social platforms. Now, as for the world leaders, the presidents, the kings, the princes, the governors, and the royal families, some of the comments and questions which they bring up regarding the situation within Palestine are rather straight up and straightforward outrageous. Some of the questions which they ask are, why do you fight the oppression of the Zionists, O Palestinians? Why do you tease them until they eradicate Gaza? Would it not have been better for you to have stayed besieged and subservient and to allow the Zionists to kill your people? Would it not have been better for you to have allowed them to rule over your land so that they may oppress your honor and asperse your honor and your dignity? Would it not have been better for you to have lived under their rule and to have met their demands and commandments so that they do not bomb your land and kill your children? These are the kind of questions which are asked by our world leaders, and more shamefully among the Arab world leaders, who are supposed to be those who are the closest allies in blood and in heart to the Palestinians. These are the questions asked by the people who do not understand the truth of what is happening within Gaza. These are the ignorant people, the people who are blinded not by their eyes but rather by their hearts. Those who do not know that the Zionists want the Palestinians as well as the just and honorful and truthful people of the world to surrender to them. And by surrendering to them, we give them control over us, so that they may humiliate us and take control over us as they have humiliated the Palestinians for the past 75 years. And if the just militant groups within Palestine had not risen and started in liberating the holy lands of Al-Aqsa from the Zionist oppressors, they would only have increased in their oppression and aggression towards the innocent citizens of Gaza, of Palestine. They want you to be convinced that this is a war between Israel and Hamas. They want you to be convinced that this is an argument or a disagreement over a portion of land. They want you to be convinced that this is not a war regarding humanity. They want you to be convinced that it is an argument over land. Just as they convinced you before that it was a Syrian matter between their leader and their followers and their people. And just as they convinced you before that it was an Iraqi matter between their people, and it was not a brutal invasion of Western countries. And as they convinced you before that it was a Libyan issue among their people, and that we had no say in it, and it did not concern us. And through this, they managed to isolate the truthful and just people of the world, country by country, one by one, all while we sat back as the people of the world and did nothing, due to them telling us that we should mind our country and not mind others. They do not want you as the people of the world to know and to see and to acknowledge that this is an existential doctrinal battle, and that the Western countries have aligned themselves with the Zionists on their side. And those countries who are just and who are truthful and who are honorful have aligned themselves behind the Palestinians and behind the just. Once again, I do ask all viewers to share the link of the broadcasts to your friends, your family, and your followers across your social platforms and across your WhatsApp statuses and to all of your groups. Even the shameless Zionist American President Joe Biden stated in a recent interview that you do not have to be a Jew to be a Zionist, and that if Israel was not invented, as America, they would need to invent Israel. This is the ignorance and arrogance of our world leaders of today's day and age. And following this, he sent them shipments of destructive weaponry for the purpose of bombing and destroying the innocent people of Gaza and destroying their homes and their schools and their hospitals and their places of worship. So I tell you now that this is not a conflict of religion. This is a conflict of humanity. They are not targeting Muslims as they see it across live broadcasts. They are targeting Muslims as well as non-Muslims. They are targeting masjids and they are targeting churches. So in this matter, we need to stand together to stop this oppression and this genocide from commencing and from going forth. The American Zionist president not only sent them shipments of destructive weaponry, rather he sent them 2,000 soldiers to support their genocide as well. He was not the only of the ignorant and arrogant world leaders to do so. Many other Western countries such as Britain, Germany and France voiced out their support for the apartheid regime of Israel, and they supported them in military equipment, they supported them in finances, in media, as well as politics. They do not care about the victims from amongst the children, the women, the patients, the elderly, nor the infants. And in the destruction of Al-Ahli hospital, they did not care about the lives of the countless children, of the countless women, nor the countless patients. The Western leaders know the truth behind this matter, and they have prepared for this confrontation. They have prepared for the inevitable. These are your world leaders, and these are the deeds of your world leaders. But for our world leaders, what have our world leaders done? What about our governors? What about our heads? What about our armies? What have they done to prepare for this confrontation? The bold and the brave amongst them were those who came forth and condemned the acts of the apartheid regime of Israel. The brave ones came together and made a statement that they were ready to hold a conference to look up the case. My dear respected brothers and elders and sisters, what conference is it that they speak about? They tell us that they will hold a conference to look up the matter. What conference do they speak about? The same conference that besieged our people in Syria. The same conference that let down the people of Gaza time and time again. The same conference of which members care only for their own political interests. Is this the conference which they wish to hold? A conference of words but no action. What conference do they speak about? And I assure you that days will surely come upon them when they will seek for allies, but they will find none from among the righteous to assist them. For indeed no righteous person will desert another where his honor may be aspersed and his respect violated, except that God Almighty will desert him in a place where he wishes his help. So if you are a coward leader of a nation, and you cannot help the oppressed and the innocent, then I urge you, open the way for those who will. If your strength has failed you, and your fear for your positions are greater than your guile for justice and for humanity, then there are people who hold their souls in their hands and are ready to give it fighting for a truthful and just cause. So let them go to the aid of the Palestinians, and let them go to the aid of the oppressed, and let them put an end to the genocide. Once again, I do urge you all to share the link across your social platforms and your WhatsApps to your friends, family, as well as your groups and all other contacts. This battle is not a battle of religion. This is a battle of humanity. This is our battle. This is our battle as the people of justice and the people of truth. And no one has the right to reduce it to a Palestinian battle. No one has the right to say that they do not allow us to stand for what is right. We are seeing women and children crying out for us to open our eyes. Hospitals are being bombed. Schools are being bombed. Homes are being bombed. We are seeing the remnants of children. We are seeing destruction upon destruction. We are seeing genocide. Schools are being bombed and we see the remnants of children. This is a day of oppression. This is a day of destruction. And there can be no compassion. There can be no forgiveness. There can be no mercy. There can be no support for a person or for a body or a regime which does such kind of vile and evil actions. And we as the people, we will not remain calm. We will not be insulted. We will not be silenced. We will not turn the blind eye. And we will not accept an oppressive Zionist state. The fires of oppression and genocide in Gaza are blazing. And the fires within our hearts are blazing due to the injustice and ignorance of the so-called world leaders. O nation of justice, O nation of truth, how many times has a child cried out to us from amongst these oppressed people, from amongst these innocents? Our duty as the people, for anyone who is capable, particularly from the people of Palestine, is to march forward in the just and noble cause and in the path of justice and truth. And the duty for all those outside of Palestine is to help the oppressed as much as possible, to encourage them and to not discourage them. If not by wealth, then by speech. If not by speech, then by media. If not by media, then through our prayers and carrying their cause and their burdens upon our shoulders. And my dear respected brothers, sisters, and elders, do not underestimate the impact of demonstrations, because they are a message to the criminal leaders of the world that people are proud and that we will not tolerate shame and that we will not tolerate injustice and we will not tolerate genocide and we will not tolerate an oppressive Zionist state and we will not tolerate the massacre of thousands of innocents. Now I hope that what I said serves as an eye-opener and an encouragement towards the truth. So now as 1:30 nears, we will prepare to meet our first guest for the day, being Brother Arshad Samodien, the head of youth for Al-Quds Foundation. And if any of you have any questions regarding that you would like to direct to him, please do not hesitate to send them through the comment section. So now we will be going on a short break until Brother Samodien is available, and he will be joining us within the next 10 minutes. I wish you all farewell. Please do remain on the live, and please do share the link. We will be joining you within the next 10 minutes. Okay, there we are.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, after quite a bit of technical
Quite a bit of, yes.
Yes,
How are you doing, brother?
Good, alhamdulillah. I cannot see, okay, myself, so I don't know how the video is coming out.
No problem at all.
Am I on the video?
No, it's a blank screen.
A blank screen, okay, no problem. Should I activate the video, or should I activate video or something, or is there,
you can try the option there. There is a camera.
Let me see. Okay, no, that is off. And if I go on, it is on. Oh, I think it's, but it's, I should. Yes, and sure. I'm just going to close the door. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Just give me a second.
No problem at all. Viewers, please do share the live, share the link, encourage your friends, family, and followers to join. Okay, brother, please introduce yourself for the guests and for the viewers.
Good afternoon and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. My name is Arshad Samodien from Cape Town, and I'm here representing the Youth for Al-Quds South Africa branch.
And how are you doing today?
Wallah, alhamdulillah, we thank Allah Ta'ala. Alhamdulillah, we thank Allah, all is good. And believe it or not, this is my first Instagram live video being interviewed, and that's why there was some technical assistance needed in the beginning there.
Well, I'm glad I could have been of some assistance. So, regarding the issue in Palestine, of course, if any of the viewers have any questions, you may feel free to leave them in the comment section, and direct it at Brother Samodien, inshallah.
There we go.
So, Brother Samodien will be having him here on the live from now up until 4:15, inshallah, God willing. And then after that, we'll be having a short 5 to 10 minute break to allow time for our next representative, our next guest to come live, inshallah. So without any further ado, let us begin with the questions, inshallah. So, Brother Samodien, in your point of view, the Israel-Palestine conflict, how some are labeling it, would you consider it a fair term, the word conflict, and an accurate way of framing it as a conflict in regards to the different military capability as well as finance and political ties?
Yeah, I think that is a good question to start off the discussion. And the terms and the meanings of terms is always important in discussing any topic, and especially so with this topic. For example, we would have seen over the last few weeks how Palestinian captives are referred to as prisoners, and the prisoners of war of the Israeli side and in the same sentence are referred to as hostages. So the issue of terms and the narrative and framing the narrative has been an important one all the while. So coming to your question, is it fair? Is it right to call it a conflict, or are there other terms that we should use? So conflict could be a word or a term to describe parts of the situation, because it is a conflict. It is a major conflict, probably the biggest conflict, if we want to talk about, and the conflict has so many different levels. But if we want to sum up the situation, the most important term, or the easiest terms to use to understand the issue at hand in Palestine is that it is a settler colonialist project, or it is an occupation. It is a modern day occupation of the Palestinian land.
What percentage of that land would you say is rightfully land that was given to the Jewish Israeli community by the Britain Empire when they had control over the land, compared to what is today?
Well, all Palestinians would agree that that Britain never had any authority to give any part of the land to the Zionists to make an exclusively Jewish Zionist state. If we look at over the last 100 years, from the turn of the century, the early 1900s, we see that Jews in particular came into Palestine and started buying up more and more land. If we look at, we've all seen those maps of what Palestine looked like in the early 1900s and how it progressed to look like at 1948, with 78% of the land occupied, with the Nakba, or the forced dispossession and the destroying, the flattening of villages, and the mass murder of Palestinians, 1947 into 1948, culminating into the announcement of this new state on Palestinian land. So we say that Britain never had the right to give any part of it. The Palestinians rightfully say that they do not concede any of Palestine other than to their rightful owners. At the same time, for Palestine, for realpolitik, or for the order of the day, Palestinians have been willing to negotiate settlement or a long-term truce many times over. The Palestinians have entered into, and we know that the most popular and famous negotiations was the Oslo Accords between the United States, the PLO, then headed by Yasser Arafat, the chairman of the PLO at the time, and the Israeli Zionist, or the occupation state. Any person looking at the last 30 years of the Oslo Accords and what has happened subsequently will agree that it gave the Palestinians nothing. It did not give them a state in any sense of the word, and it only deepened the suffering of Palestinians on a daily basis. While all our eyes are on the Gaza, rightfully so, all our eyes on the Gaza at every moment, wanting to know what has happened in the last 5 minutes, what has happened in the last hour, as this genocide continues under the eyes of 8 billion people all around the world. At the same time, we say that in the West Bank, which was the state given to the West Bank, which was the state given to the PLO to form the Palestinian state after 1993, the Oslo Accords. Palestinians has actually been living the worst life over the last 30 years. If any researcher, anyone who has been following this case of the Palestinian people, would have noticed that long before 7th of October, every day, without fail, every day by the morning, plus minus 25, about 25 Palestinian young men and sometimes women would have been taken, kidnapped from their homes in the middle of the night as part of a daily program of continuing the suffering of the Palestinian people, and that as the Israelis themselves say, the Palestinians should feel that at any moment the soldiers are right here behind your ear, that you cannot even think in the middle of the night of uprising or of gaining your freedom or your land back. So we know that the so-called peace accords has given the Palestinians zero in the last 30 years.
Okay. Regarding what Brother Arshad Samodien was speaking about the Oslo Accords, for those of you who perhaps are not aware of what the Oslo Accords are, the Oslo Accords was basically a agreement which was signed in 1993 between the Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat and the Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, which aimed to achieve peace between Israel and Palestine within 5 years, which was actually the first movement towards peace between the states. And the second agreement of the Oslo Accords was signed in 1995, 2 years later, which divided the occupied West Bank into 3 sections. These sections were labeled Area A, B, and C. The Palestinian Authority, or otherwise known as the PA, was offered the limited rule of 18% only of the land of West Bank, as Israel continued to control the rest of West Bank. And due to this unfair...
I think I need to press that button. There we go.
So as we were speaking before we cut off due to some network connectivity issues, we were discussing the unfair share of land between the Israelis and the Palestinians in West Bank, and the unequal share of control over the land, which ultimately led to the dispute between the Israeli and Palestinian citizens, which ultimately fueled the fires between the already long-standing conflict. So once again, I'm just requesting all of the viewers to share the live, as we were cut off due to some network malfunctions. So just share it once more so that we can get all of those who are here to rejoin. And then allow us to move on to the next question. How would you say the right of return applies to the Palestinian people as stipulated in the international law by the United Nations?
Yeah. Bismillah. So even though the international law gives the Palestinians right of return to their land, it is clear for everyone who looks at this issue from any angle that the Israelis, the Zionist state, has made this issue specifically has made life for Palestinians, for example, number one, so difficult, and any thought of self-determination, any thought of a proper state, any thought of freedom on their own land, that we can see that the Zionist state was never going to entertain the right of return for Palestinians that have been displaced since the Nakba in 1948. In fact, the Zionist state seeks and actively displaces Palestinians on a day-to-day basis. The people are finding out now what the Palestinians have actually been going through, and much still needs to be uncovered. How Palestinians have been treated, those in the West Bank, what type of draconian measures the Palestinians in the West Bank are living under every day, and those in Al-Quds, those in Jerusalem, East Jerusalem in particular, because West Jerusalem has already been completely occupied, every day Palestinians live under the threat of number one, losing their home and losing their residence. They say, for example, if a Palestinian in Jerusalem gets married to a Palestinian in the West Bank, then the one living in Jerusalem loses their residency in Jerusalem. I mean, the laws that the Zionist state have come up with to displace Palestinians all the time is something is very absurd. It's something for the Guinness Book of Records, probably, for the types of laws that they have come up with. So when we speak of the right of return, Palestinians across the board, no matter which persuasion, which organization and movement they follow, or just general public, the Palestinians hold fast to the right of return. As we know that some of them hold the keys, as the keys have been handed down generation to generation when they left their homes in 1948, and those that had to leave it in 1967, and those in 1973, and in every little and big battle and war and displacement that the Palestinians have been going through. And even now, we are coming to understand that one of the big aims of the Zionist occupation with their onslaught on the Gaza is to try to displace them out of the Gaza. It is not enough. It is not enough that they've been under siege for 17 years. It is not enough that they have controlled their movement, land, air, and sea. It is not enough that they made their life so difficult. Now they want to displace them and annex this part of Palestine again.
Why do you think that the general laws and rules of international law are not applied to situations where Israel is mentioned?
Yeah, well, it's become abundantly clear now, as Biden, the American president, has said that there is no red line when it comes to Israel, or he is purported to have said that there is no red lines. It has become abundantly clear that the Zionist project has not only been completely supported and funded by the so-called biggest Western democracies, and that they are ready now to actively participate in the ethnic cleansing of 2.2 million, and in fact already the type of statements coming from the Zionist and the Israeli politicians are alluding to what they want to do with the Palestinians in the West Bank after they have finished off the Palestinians in the Gaza. And it's not surprising. It's not surprising because one of the main goals of the apartheid project in Palestine by the occupation has been to eradicate the local population. We know that the apartheid in South Africa, of the main goals was to enslave the local population in South Africa. And so they did, and we are still suffering and reeling from that enslavement of apartheid in South Africa. But we see that of the main goals of the Zionist project on occupation in Palestine is actually much more cruel and inhumane and worse and direct, and that is to eradicate the local population. They want to get rid of each and every Palestinian, and that is why we see how full Palestinian families. We've read now, and we've heard accounts of in Gaza in the last 2 months, one family, 150 members of one family wiped out 150 members, other families 90 members, 70 members, 60, 50. Complete family is wiped out, and there's no mention for thereafter. They have been taken off, as they say, off the population register. Why are they attacking women and kids so much? Because they don't want the next generation to, to fight for their liberation. We can see this. We can see this as clear as day now.
There has been much talk on a two-state solution between Palestine and Israel. And as we can see with the current situation, it's clear that Israel is not, has no intention towards a two-state solution. But if reason does arise for them to agree to a two-state solution, of course on the behalf of Israel, then what is your view on a two-state solution and your opinion?
1 minute. 1 minute. Ask him to make a few. Sorry.
No problem.
That is an important question, and I think it's many times spoken about by non-Palestinians outside of Palestine. I think what is very important that is coming out, these days, and that we need to articulate, is that with our ideas for how Palestine should look after they free themselves from the occupation is an internal issue, not for those on the outside to prescribe and to determine what type of government and who should be in government. I was very intrigued and interested by the comments of one of the Hamas leaders. There were so many of the Palestinian faction leaders in South Africa just over 10 days ago for this International Global Campaign for Return conference. And this question was asked to one of the International Bureau members, the former Health Minister, Dr. Basim Naim. And he said, and imagine he is a senior member of the Hamas. He is a senior member of the Hamas. He is a senior member of the Hamas political bureau and leading the fight for freedom, as we see. And they've been democratically elected in 2005, going into 2006, which the West immediately did not recognize because they didn't want to recognize them. They say, Hamas says that, inshallah, once they attain their freedom, they will then lay, open to the people the options for governance, whether it is a normal election, so re-election, and the people must decide who they want to lead their society. And they've looked at different options of putting in front of their people. So even they are not as arrogant as saying, because we were the party that for example, if they are the party to lead them into liberation, to say that they must lead. So we say from the outside that we will not, if the Palestinians agree to a two-state solution after whatever period of time, then the international community and those supporting them should support it. If the Palestinians say that that is not viable, as it has not been viable over the last 30 years, when they did put out their hand to reconciliation and to a possible two-state solution, then we say that. In fact, the most striking thing, I think, is that after on the 7th of October, and after 7th of October, it seems that the Zionist occupation has understood that there's only a possibility for a one-state solution, either only for the Zionists or only for the Palestinians. It looks to us, looking from the outside, and the Palestinians themselves say that this is the start of the ultimate fight for freedom. And Palestinians have always been clear that if they are able to liberate and free their land, that all those who want to live in it are free to live in it under their rule, be the whatever religious background, whether it's Christians and Jews, and as they have lived there in safety and in peace before 1948.
Of course, there's been quite a lot of destruction and bombing over the last couple of days, and rather the last 75 years. There's been quite an absurd amount of destruction and bombing and deaths. And as this is a live to open the eyes of those who are not aware of the situation that is happening, and just to explain to them that this is not a conflict of religions, rather it's a conflict of basic humanity, that they are not only killing Muslims within Gaza, but as well as Christians. So what my question to you that I am posing to you is that what do you have to say on the bombing of not only masjids but churches as well, and all places of worship within Gaza, and how it impacts the different religious groups?
Yeah, subhanallah. I think for anyone who has been following or watching the situation over the last almost 70 days now, let me close the door for the kids. One second.
No problem, no problem.
I think anybody who has been watching the situation unfold over the last almost 70 days and seeing the almost complete destruction of a part of Palestine, all of its almost all of its infrastructure, not sparing anything, like you say, schools, mosques, churches, also opened the eyes of so many. Perhaps many people thought that the Palestinians were only Muslims. Perhaps also many thought that the Zionists were only Jews. Part of this awakening of people all around the world is seeing that the Palestinian community themselves are made up of Muslims predominantly, and also Christians. And in fact, in this international conference in Johannesburg, which I alluded to a few minutes ago, one of the leading priests attended. One of the leading Palestinian priests attended that conference, and he spoke like any other Palestinian Muslim would speak about, in terms of the liberation and in terms of supporting the resistance, because they see themselves as one. So I think on both sides, we've been seeing that Palestinians are made up of so many different people, those that are religiously following Islam, those that are practicing or non-practicing, like any other community in the world. And at the same time, in the Jewish state, people are starting to see who they are. They are the very fanatical Zionists that call for the annihilation of Palestinians, not leaving anything behind, not man, woman, child, or animal. And there are those that are more liberal in their understanding, and that many of them that don't want part of this war. We see many Zionists, in fact, that have left, and many Jews that have been living in the Zionist state that left Israel after the 7th of October. Those that, for example, don't want to live in an unsafe state because they have been lured there with the guarantee of safety, in the blessed and in the Holy Land. And those that just don't want to partake in this genocide anymore. This genocide has definitely not been only been taking place for past 60 odd days, but it's so in their face now, because it was over a wall in the West Bank, over a wall, over in Gaza. So they've always been shielding their people from seeing the genocide all the time. But now that it is thrust into everyone's faces, even many, Zionists or Israelis or Jews are saying we don't want part of this anymore. And some of them have left Israel, saying that they're not going to come back. And some of them, have just left for other reasons as well.
And of course, we have been seeing across the protests and demonstrations throughout the world that many Jews, and not just Jews, but rabbis, do attend these demonstrations to voice out their support for the people of Palestine and to basically condemn the actions and atrocities of the Israeli state, which they claim does not represent all of the Jewish faith. Rather, it represents a faction of extremists and warmongers.
Exactly. In fact, in that same Johannesburg conference we spoke about now, there were two senior members of the Nature Carta movement of America, Rabbi Weiss and another rabbi, that all the time, goes on record and in public saying that the Zionist state does not represent Orthodox Judaism, and they have it's a perverted form of taking Judaism into a meaning and into that it does not qualify for. So and more ordinary Jews all over the world are saying that we don't stand for this. And we know in our own country, in South Africa, we have the South African Jews for Free Palestine, and we have the Not in My Name movement and others. And more are standing up every day to say that we don't want part of this. You're not doing it in my name, and in fact, it is making Jews stand up in support of Palestinians. In fact, there are many Jews now that are supporting the resistance. We see the likes and greats, the professors and scholars, and we hear the likes of Dr. Professor Norman Finkelstein and others saying that Palestinians have the right to resist, and they have the right to fight the occupier by whatever means necessary. And we know this is guaranteed in international law. So imagine if the Jews, the fair-thinking Jews in the world are saying this, yet the Zionist state is so hell-bent on breaking every perceivable known law in the world, just to guarantee a little bit a longer stay. But we know every occupation. Every occupation of any land had its time frame, and it seems that the way that the Zionists are carrying on now, that they are actually hastening their own downfall. The international opinion is swaying heavily against them from all quarters, whether it is from governmental quarters, public opinion, international organizations. In fact, the UN, we don't know, what the UN stands for anymore, if they'll be able to do anything. But even how many UN staff has been killed in the Gaza alone in the last 2 months, and they continue to. We see now Article 377, the last UN resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire. So states, imagine the whole world, the overwhelming majority of countries all over the world is saying to Israel, stop the fire, let the aid in, and they are disregarding the whole world. So they are becoming the pariah state that South Africa once was. South Africa now is receiving guests and are open to the whole world, and people can come here. But it wasn't like that pre 1994. So large parts of the world were sanctioning and boycotting South Africa because of the inhumane apartheid policies that were practiced against the majority of the people here in South Africa by a small minority. And similarly, we see the tables are turning against the Zionist occupation. In fact, this is a test of humanity. I think this is now the ultimate test. It is inconsequential if we speak about what your religious affiliation or background is. This test, the test of Gaza and Palestine, is calling everyone directly, every human being in the world directly, and asking them to on which side of humanity they stand for.
Of course. And just to pose you one more question before we let our guest speaker, brother Arshad Samodien, go. The last question will be, what message do you give to the people of the world, the people of multiple races, nationalities, and religions? A message to them.
Yeah. My message would be for everyone to do what they can. In fact, the Palestinians, their rising up has awakened the peoples of the world. People everywhere in the world is now more acutely aware of their own injustices in their own lands. I mean, here in Cape Town or South Africa, we are now more acutely looking at the failings of our own government, even though we are living in this democratic country. So the Palestinians, in fact, are waking up the world. They are putting in the humanity back into the world. They are, as much as the buildings have been destroyed, they are rebuilding humanity. As much as the schools have been destroyed, they are re-educating us what it means to be honest and upright and stand by your word. As much as the universities and the churches and the hospitals have been bombed and with whoever was in it, they are teaching us what it means to be honest to your faith when they leave behind all of their family members and they say, glory be to Allah that has chosen my family to be martyrs. So I think the world is learning life lessons every minute from the people of the Gaza. I think everyone should continue to keep their focus and their eyes onto what is happening, so that we can we can not only learn the lessons in our minds, but make it practical to all of our countries. I think what is going to happen is that when peace and dignity is restored to Palestine, by extension, it's going to spread across the world. I also, at the same time, want people to dispel the myths and to debunk the lies. It is now 70 days, and the mainstream media still wants to speak about beheaded babies and babies that were cut out of women's stomachs and babies that were burned. Yet they did not show one picture, or any Israeli went on any media platform anywhere to say that my baby was burned or my baby was beheaded. It's because we know that is the biggest load of lies. But just to dehumanize the Palestinians, they continue to say that. So we want to reiterate that the Palestinians themselves have said that when they did what they did on the 7th of October, they went for military targets, and as by Israeli accounts that has come out now, that many of the civilians that have been killed on the 7th of October has actually been killed by the Israeli forces by bombing the area with Apache helicopters and by striking them with from the air by what is called the Hannibal directive, that if there's a terrorist, we can just kill everyone in sight. So we know that they have no value to their own hostages or prisoners of war by flattening Gaza. So I think everyone should continue what they are doing by raising the awareness, by dispelling the lies, and use the lessons coming out of the Gaza to impact our life. I know everyone wants an opportunity to do something more. For example, if the war finally ends, how do we go there and help to rebuild a hospital or a school or a kindergarten? And that the time will come. But there's so much else that we can do. I think the last point is that South Africans must make sure and work hard to keep South Africa a safe space for the Palestinian resistance, for the Palestinian awareness, and for the Palestinian struggle. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you for your time, Brother Arshad Samodien. It was a pleasure having you on the program. I'll now be letting you go, and we'll be momentarily be letting Brother Samodien go, and we'll be joined by our next speaker. Jazakallah khair, barakallah feek. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother, hope you are well, inshallah.
I'm well, alhamdulillah, and yourself?
Alhamdulillah. Brother, will of
Please
Allah.
introduce yourself, brother, for the viewers, inshallah.
Okay, my name is Zakir Mayet. I'm the voice of Jabal Al-Haqq. I'm an attorney, admitted attorney, practicing attorney, based in Johannesburg, South Africa.
It's a pleasure to have you here today, Brother Zakir.
Shukran for having me, brother. Although it will be for a brief period of time, but I hope I can share some information that would be beneficial, inshallah.
We hope so as well. I mean, I see in the comments someone is commenting that they can see both videos. So perhaps it's just my screen that's not showing yours. So we can work with that, inshallah. So allow us to get to the first question. Of course, you yourself, you are an attorney, so you do deal with law. So you would be familiar with international law as well. Regarding the recent United Nations conference, where it was voted for a ceasefire, and America, along with a few other countries, actually vetoed the vote, which led to it not being implemented due to America being a senior member, of course, of the United Nations. So what would your view be on the fact that America's veto could impact the implementation of a ceasefire, which ultimately leads to more genocide and more murder?
I think there's a few things that we need to discuss. The first thing is the role of international law. International law is based on reciprocity. It's more that you have to consent to the application of international law. For example, the ICC, the International Criminal Court, if they do make a ruling against a leader of the United States or any of the members of the armed forces, there's something called the Hague Invasion Act, which allows the authorization of force to break a prison open and extract officials or service members. So it shows you that there's a blatant disregard for any accountability mechanisms. That being said, what we have today in terms of international law is a structure that reinforces the principle that might is right. So the United States, despite the global condemnation, despite the global pressure, despite the pressure from countries such as China and Russia that have made their position quite clear in terms of the genocide taking place in Gaza and Palestine at large, despite all of this, the United States stands firmly in the camp of Israel. What this does show us as individuals that are part of the global movement and global South is that international law is a mechanism of accountability that has no teeth. It does not have any application in real life, and we see its failure right now. It's not able to stop the genocide taking place in Gaza. Now you look at that's the Security Council vote. Now we look at what has happened in the General Assembly. The General Assembly has been a clear barometer of global opinion, and it is clearly demonstrating that the entire world is on one side, and Israel and the United States and one or two minuscule nations are on the other side, the side of occupation, the side of genocide, and the side of colonialism. So what we have right now is a complete failure in international law, international accountability, and this is the discussion that's coming out of the Gazan war, is that the current structures of power cannot continue to exist in the format that it is, and this has exposed levels of colonialism, levels of apartheid, and levels of hypocrisy.
As you are a member of Jabal Al-Haqq and the spokesperson, Jabal Al-Haqq does receive news updates which they broadcast from their own station. So as we are aware of what is happening in Gaza, there has not been many updates or any kind of information regarding the land of Al-Aqsa, of Jerusalem. What updates does Jabal al-Haqq have, or information rather do you have of the situations for the Palestinians around and within Jerusalem itself?
So the latest information we got was that yesterday there was a group of settlers that invaded Masjid al-Aqsa, as is common practice these days, surrounded by Israeli soldiers. This is becoming a clear trend, and this was also something that had taken place shortly before this particular operation to find Al-Quds. And this was to normalize the separation of Masjid al-Aqsa into the Jewish quarter and the Muslim quarter. This is basically an attempt to impose facts on the ground and to normalize the separation of Masjid al-Aqsa, as much like what was done with the Ibrahimi Mosque. And that's in Al-Khalil in Hebron. So Masjid al-Aqsa has consistently been attacked. The surrounding areas, we continue to see clashes in those areas. However, the more fierce clashes, and that is why even our own sources have focused more heavily on the Gaza Strip, as well as Jenin, Nablus, Tulqaram, Tubas, Ramallah even, Al-Khalil. These are all the focus areas. Israel is currently dedicating a lot of its resources towards the West Bank, as well as the Gaza Strip, and as well as the north, to secure the border with Lebanon in the event of a Hezbollah PMU attack. It's not just Hezbollah on that border. There are other players that are on that border at the moment in the north as well. So a lot of focus has been shifted away from Jerusalem and Al-Quds, and has been on these two areas. That is not to say that atrocities are not taking place. It's not to say that there are no clashes. However, we must bear in mind that to get information out of Palestine is becoming quite difficult, simply because of censorship, targeting, and we know that Israel itself is currently looking to control the information coming out of Israel and Palestine. So that is particularly a problem right now. So it is quite difficult, but this is the information that we've got as of yesterday.
Thank you for the in-depth answer to the question, for the very informativeness of the answer as well. The next question is regarding the death toll between the within this conflict. How does the death toll on the Palestinian side compared to that of the Israeli side, as Israel has commented that what they are doing is a payback for October the 7th, whereas the killings that they have done are much higher and much more vile than what happened on October the 7th, even though that October the 7th was no operation against civilians, rather a freedom operation carried out against the militants of Israel.
I think there's a couple of things there as well that's quite laden in this question. It's a heavy question, and it's got numerous assets to it. The first asset that we have to unpack is the operation on the 7th of October. The 7th of October, and this is not my words. I'm not trying to promote the issue of Palestine and say it was solely military targets that were targeted and there were no civilians. Yes, there were civilians. That was part of the operation. There are some, and there's obviously no full control, but what has been stated quite clearly from individuals like Scott Ritter and even Colonel Douglas McGregor, etc., is that we have to determine who was responsible. There's just this general claim that Hamas has killed civilians. However, that turns a blind eye to other information that has come out, and even video footage that clearly shows that Hamas had gone to extreme lengths to try and protect civilians, and particularly children and mothers. That is very, very clear. What has also come out in Haaretz was the expose that the Nova Music Festival, numerous individuals were targeted by AH-64 Apache. So the gunship and the Hannibal Directive, and I think your previous guest had touched briefly on this as well. So it's a complex picture. But when you look at what Israel is doing right now, with regards to the 7th of October, the simple thing, it is revenge. And who sets the precedent for revenge? It was the United States with 9/11. They took their revenge on Afghanistan that had no direct link. None of the hijackers on the day were linked to Afghanistan. They didn't come from Afghanistan. They tried to tie to Osama bin Laden. The conditions were very clear. They said that if you want to try Osama bin Laden, let us have it in a Muslim country. But there were other things. There were other reasons for that, and this is the Wolfowitz, Cheney principles and plan that they wanted to take over and redraft the Middle East and rewrite the borders, etc. So when you look at these types of incidents that we are seeing now in Gaza, they are just following the American doctrine, and that is to answer any form of humiliation or any form of defeat, regardless of how it is framed, as one with disproportionate force and one to teach others a lesson. That is simply what it is. That is why when you look at the United States military doctrine, when you look at particularly Israel's military doctrine, and when you read up on the principles of deterrence capacity, you find links, a lot of links going back into the American armed forces. And this is what this is. This was an attempt to restore deterrence by destroying Gaza. And Israel is failing dismally. We see this decline in this failure of this policy since 2006, when they faced Hezbollah in the north, in Lebanon, and they had lost. And at that time, Hezbollah was not as capable as they are today. So they start in 2006, they lose deterrence capacity. And in 2006, already Giora Island and Gadi Eisenkot were part of the current war planning system within Israel. They're still very active. These individuals came up with something called the Dahiyya principle. The Dahiyya principle is to choose the poorest neighborhoods and flatten it and cause such severe civilian death and destruction that it would pressure the Mujahideen to give up their positions. That's basically what it is. And when you look at this and you look at the manner in which it is taking place, that explains why you have such disproportionate casualties on the ground. That is why you see what is happening in Gaza is large-scale massacres at a time. And this is not accidental. It's completely intentional. The magazine Plus 973, I believe it is, they've just released a massive expose. Yuval Abram, if I recall the journalist's name correctly, Yuval spoke about this, and he says that the 8200 intelligence unit knows exactly how much collateral damage there is. They know exactly how many people are in those homes. The Americans have given indications on this as well, stating that they have geothermal satellites that scan the area. We know that they're doing numerous surveillance scans. In fact, this morning, a Predator drone was authorized to fly into Lebanese airspace to collect information and intel. We know that there's been P-8 Poseidons that are off the coast of Gaza, off the coast of occupied Palestine and Lebanon, collecting intelligence. And this is to do IRS scanning. So when you look at the picture, it's intentional. It's meant to send a message, and the simple reason is to try and accommodate for the fact that Israel is losing on the ground militarily. They have achieved no goals, whereas Hamas has achieved all its goals, whereas the resistance has achieved all its goals. And I think this is precisely the problem here, is that Israel has to continue with its disproportionate killing of civilians in the hope of resurrecting this concept of deterrence capacity. But it's a complete failure. It's never going to work.
Regarding the claims and comments of Western countries by deeming organizations such as Hamas and Hezbollah as terror organizations, what would you comment on this regarding the treatment and release of the hostages, as you could see with recently released videos of the hostages being released by Hamas and the Palestinian jihad organizations?
So there's two parts to this. The one thing is with regards to the labeling of Hezbollah and Hamas as terrorist organizations. A handful of countries refer to Hamas as a terrorist organization. The United States, Israel, Egypt to some extent, although they criminalize Ikhwan, but we know the roots of Hamas is in Ikhwan. We have Japan, Nauru, Palau, Micronesia, These are the countries. We know the European Union Court has made a ruling in that regard, declaring Hamas as a terrorist organization. However, many European countries have backdoor channels with Hamas and still continue to engage with them on an open basis. And so you have these handful of countries that project themselves to be the barometer or the reflection of global opinion, and it's far from it. These are the same countries that have committed atrocities and massacres throughout the world. These are the same individuals that have massacred their own indigenous populations to build a way of life and ease for themselves. So it comes as no surprise that they would side with Israel and try and label Hamas or Hezbollah as terrorist organizations. And this is an old tactic of colonial states. So we look at the colonial settler state of apartheid here in South Africa. The concepts were exactly the same. That is exactly why they view the African National Congress as a terrorist organization. And at that time, they used the concept of communism. They wanted to use communism as the test for whether or not individuals are terrorists. Now it's whether you are a Muslim that believes in political Islam and whether you believe in the establishment of your rights through jihad fi sabilillah. That's what terrorism is about. That's how the modern world defines terrorism. In terms of the prisoner releases, I think, and if you look at what has happened, when you look at the ceasefire and how it collapsed, in fact, the information that came out was that Hamas and Islamic Jihad and the other factions, the Mujahideen brigades, etc., basically the Joint Operations Room, had said that they are willing to extend the ceasefire. They had given 7 proposals. Hamas had accepted 3, Hamas being the largest of the factions. They accepted 3 proposals from the Egyptian mediators. Israel had rejected all of them. They dragged their feet overnight and then rejected it in the end. The reason for this is quite simple. The reason for it was because the prisoner exchanges were becoming catastrophic for Israel's PR. Every time you have a release, every time you see something new, you see a old Jewish lady turning around and shaking the hand of a Qassam fighter. You see the lady Maya Regev, and there's these jokes that are going around. But I think there's something very special about this movement where she says, "Bye, shukran." You know, these are very clear things. I mean, shukran. Why would you address someone who has tortured you, who has threatened you, in the language that they use, Arabic? Why would you go to that extent? In fact, if you just look at the basic logic of this, in South Africa, when they tried to implement Afrikaans in the schools, it gave us the Soweto riots. Language is very important. It's not something that you would naturally adopt. Yet Maya Regev responds in Arabic. There are other video clips of captives that responded in Arabic. And they continuously state that you have difficulties and yet you acted with kindness, yet you continue to do this. And to date, Israel has not allowed an interview with any of the captives directly. It's always through a secondary source. The one interview that they did allow with the elderly lady in the very beginning was a complete disaster because she said they treated us well. In fact, there was then an intervention. If you watch the clip carefully, you see an intervention basically telling her to shut her mouth because this is problematic for Israel. This is how it works. So the issue of captives, etc., that is why Netanyahu has had a meeting with the families of the captives, advising them that you may not get your people back alive. This resulted in a scuffle. And this is from Israeli sources, not even any of our own sources. These are from Israelis themselves. So what you see is the complete dispelling of the myth that Hamas is a terrorist organization, that Hamas treats people badly. You just see this entire edifice of Israel falling apart. I think it becomes very difficult to justify any action of Israel today when you see what Israel truly is. I think we've gone far beyond this point of conscientization about the issue of Palestine. I think the blood of the martyrs is exposing Israel for what it truly is, a genocidal maniac state that's completely off the cliff.
And of course, at the hostage exchanges, we saw the good conditions in which the Israeli captives were when they were released and returned back to their authorities and to their homeland. However, on the other hand, we saw Palestinian prisoners, rather, not captives, rather prisoners released, and among them was a youngster of the age of 13, if I'm not mistaken, perhaps 15, but nonetheless, with his age, his arms and his fingers were broken and tied up in a cast. So, what do you have to say on this?
I think it's very clear. I'm trying to read more into it, to be totally honest, but I think it goes down to the manner in which one views the other. And I think there's a very clear principle in Islam, is that you must honor those you fight against. That yes, you may dislike, you may even hate to some extent, but you must act honorably when you are fighting. And this is a set of values that Israel does not subscribe to. They got this concept of purity of arms, which means nothing if you look at the manner in which they conduct themselves on a daily basis. Right now, just before I came on the live, I saw Israeli soldiers in the masjid in Jenin singing one of the Zionist songs in the masjid, trying to humiliate the people. When you look at the manner in which they have conducted themselves with regards to prisoners. Now, there has been reports, and I think this is where it becomes particularly disturbing, particularly for us, as observers of the Palestinian issue. There have always been hints and whispers of sexual abuse within the Israeli prison system. That has always been there. There's a human rights report about sexual violence directed towards children that have been taken by the Zionist entity and put into administrative detention, particularly in the West Bank, etc. What we are hearing now is that this has become a practice within Israeli jails with regards to female prisoners, Palestinian female prisoners. There is sexual abuse, there's threats of sexual abuse, and this is becoming very, very clear. This was an expose that came out just before the war that had broken out. There was information that came out as an old incident of Israeli soldiers forcing Palestinian women to strip down naked in front of 50 other soldiers. And this was in the West Bank, and this information came out. And let's bear in mind that the Palestinian people have a great degree of dignity. They're incredible souls, and they hold their dignity very close to them. So instances of this nature do not get readily reported. It's not to say they don't happen, but they don't readily report this. And this is the situation that we are seeing now. And it comes down to the concept of dehumanization, as Yoav Gallant mentioned at the very beginning of this operation against Gaza, for example, when he called Palestinians human animals. He's not just talking about the people of Gaza. He's talking about Palestinians in general. And it comes from the lines of individuals such as Yoav Gallant, such as Bezalel Smotrich, such as Itamar Ben-Gvir. These are the same people who view Palestinians as nothing, as subhuman, as human animals, like they say. So when you have these two different theories or principles or sets of values in the manner in which you treat your enemy, then you will have these evident differences in the manner in which your captives are treated. And that's exactly what we are seeing today. One views the captive as a responsibility, as an amana. This is precisely why Qassam and the resistance factions behave in the manner that they do towards the captives, and this is being very clearly seen in the media. Then you have Israel that views Palestinians as subhuman and continues to torture them on a daily basis.
Of course, as we saw on a recently shared video, the horrifying scene of the Palestinian men and boys who were taken out of their homes and basically deemed as members of Hamas without any evidence whatsoever and made to strip down to their underwear, and they paraded them through the street. And it's not the first time we see things like this happen. I mean, before we've seen how the Americans did the same in Iraq and Afghanistan and so forth. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, we saw it with Abu Ghraib. And we know that the Obama administration was key in burying the 1,000, no, it's more. It was actually 10,000 images and videos of the torture that was taking place in Abu Ghraib. And this was as a result of the American war of terror. We know that they had black sites throughout. We know that there was numerous forms of torture. Then you look at what is happening again now in for example, in the Gaza Strip. Not just Gaza, we see the same thing happening in the West Bank on a regular basis. But let's look at what's happening in Gaza Strip. It goes back to this theory again that we are dealing with individuals that are subhuman, that are not entitled to dignity, that are not entitled to respect. And this is the exposure of the Zionist entity, its theory of operation, and its general thinking. And I think what is happening, and it's not being touched on much at all, whether it is within the Islamic space in terms of the lectures from the ulama, whether it is analysis, everyone is just turning a blind eye to this, but it's very evident, is that as we go along, everyone is talking about the dismantlement of Hamas. Hamas is a military and political movement. Obviously, the military is Qassam, and the political movement is Hamas itself. But what is actually happening is the dismantlement of the Zionist entity. What you are looking at is the blood of the Shuhada breaking down the Zionist entity, because even after this war is over, even after the barrels of the guns go silent, no one will stand by and allow the state of Israel to continue to exist in its current format. It's a genocidal state.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brother.
Walaikum salam.
I must apologize because due to other commitments, I would have to love you and leave you quite shortly. But I believe it would be appropriate to finalize on some note, inshallah.
No problem, inshallah. I would just like to apologize to the viewers as well as our guest speaker, as Instagram has a 1 hour time limit on each live. So after an hour it cuts, and then it will able to resume after that. So that was the reason behind the recent cut, of course. So as you were saying, brother Zakir Mayet, you may continue, inshallah.
Yeah, I think I've lost my train of thought somewhat, so I'm going to rely on you to just jog my memory.
We were speaking on the events in Abu Huraira and so forth, of the treatment of prisoners and the torturing, and how the Obama Foundation was charged with given the duty of taking these videos out of the web.
Yes, most definitely. The Obama administration at the time stated that it would be against the interests of the United States to share the atrocities. And this is precisely what Israel does. And I think it comes back to that fundamental point that Israel does not view Palestinians as human beings. If you look at Arshad, the former justice minister, shared a article or post wherein she referred to Palestinian mothers as snakes. And called for their destruction. A similar thought comes in when you look at individuals and lawmakers that refer to mowing the grass. This is the Israeli concept of going into Gaza every maybe 2 years and killing a few people, not a few, thousands at least, but that in their view is like mowing the grass, something that has to be done, something that you feel no emotion with regards to it, and it's more of a chore, that the lives of Palestinians having to cull them is a chore. So this is exactly what Israel is based on. It's about dehumanization. It is about destroying them as a people, and that is why you had Netanyahu speaking about the Palestinians as Amalek, where if you follow the biblical story, this is where you call for the destruction of every man, woman, and child, and even the animals. This is exactly what they are doing right now. So when you look at the manner in which the Palestinians treat Israeli captives, in the manner in which the Israelis treat Palestinians, you see this vast difference, and it's simply because of the way in which you view your opponent. Now, when you look at Salah ad-Din, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him, and you look at the manner in which he dealt with the Crusaders, And there's great respect even amongst the Western world for Salah ad-Din. Why? Because he was still an honorable man. You do not act in a dishonorable manner when you're in a position of power. You have greater responsibility on your shoulders when you have the ability to destroy somebody. And that is the Islamic principle, is that you are held to account, whereas the Israelis are not held to account at all. They believe that they are superior, they believe that they can do as they please, and this is precisely why we're seeing what we are seeing. That is why you have individuals like the Neturai Tarta, the Orthodox rabbis. I think your previous guest referred to them, Rabbi David Yisrael Weiss and Rabbi Rosenberg. And I know them quite well, and when you listen to them and when you speak to them, they clearly reject Zionism because of the way they dehumanize individuals, the way they go against the scriptures, the way they behave and present themselves. So I think it's very important to look at the value sets that are driving this war, and I think it's really come down to this concept, and I'm going to hopefully end on this point, is that the issue of Palestine today, and I know this is going against the grain of much of what was said or might be said on this stream, is that the issue today is jihad fi sabilillah. That is what this is about. If you can talk about Islam and ritualistic Islam and Salah and all of that, and Israel has no problems with that. The rest of the world, the United States, doesn't have a problem with that. But the moment you talk about political Islam, the moment you talk about jihad fi sabilillah to restore rights of occupied and oppressed people, that's when it becomes a problem. So today, the issue of fighting, and what we're talking about, I know Piers Morgan was hammering somebody from Hizb ut-Tahrir about the concept of jihad. The concept of jihad is striving for truth and justice, to strive in the path of Allah for righteousness and justice. That's basically what we are looking at. And what is righteousness and justice? Give the Palestinians the right to be considered human beings, to treat them with justice, with truth, to give them freedom, to give them what is basic, what is expected. These very lofty standards that the Western world puts up to the rest of the world. Give them that. Let's give them that. That is what we are striving for. Jihad is just a way of striving for that. And if it means that it has to be armed struggle, then so be it. South Africa did it. That's exactly where we came to in South Africa. It was the armed struggle. A lot is being spoken about this right now. Nelson Mandela was not a Gandhian figure. He was the founder of Umkhonto we Sizwe, the spear of the nation. They took up arms. So when the Palestinians do the same thing, then we have an issue about it. That is what is separating the two camps today. Do the Palestinians have the right to resist and to establish their rights by arms? It's an international law right. It's not something that is out of the pale of international law. So even that argument from the secularist movement is trashed, because they say that, no, it must be a Gandhian approach. That's not correct. That we must only go for BDS. No, that's not correct either. In South Africa, it was a dual approach of boycotts, divestments, and sanctions as a tool, and then there was also the armed movement. So that is what is separating the issue of Palestine today. Do you support the rights of the Palestinians to take up arms? And there's one point that needs to be raised about this, is that everyone starts the clock, talking about Zionists and those that propagate for Israel. They start the clock on the 7th of October of 2023. That's not when it starts. When you want to talk about the greatest massacres that have taken place amongst the Jewish people since the Holocaust, what about the Palestinians? What about the March of Great Return? What about the 24,000 people that were injured, or the 200 people that were killed, or the children that were physically hunted on the border? And there are videos of that where the soldiers, the snipers, cheer every time they hit a child, or they hit somebody and they are permanently disabled. What about that? What about 24,000 injured in that period of time when people were peacefully protesting? So they tried peaceful resistance. They tried everything else for years. And this is what it came down to. It had to be arms. And this is what we are seeing today, is that Israel is being dismantled by the Mujahideen on a daily basis. In fact, we are having such difficulty keeping up with the updates, because every 3 minutes we are getting information of an attack. Sometimes it's 1 minute. There's a space between the 2 factions, 3 factions, 4 factions attacks. It's 1 minute. We don't even have time to go through everything. So this is what it is. It's about the struggle for freedom, liberation in Palestine, and it's through arms. And it should not be one that we distance ourselves from, because South Africa, we as young people are recipients of that. We were the recipients of the freedom that was fought for in this particular country. So I think that is something that is going to cause a moment of reflection, and I think we need to understand where we are at in this particular battle, inshallah.
Inshallah. Brothers and sisters, that was Brother Zakir Mayet joining us from the team of Jabal Haqq, which is a team that broadcasts the news from the Mujahideen from Gaza. So if any of you would like to receive the updates from the team of Jabal Haqq on the situation in Gaza, then you may contact Brother Zakir Mayet for the link to the channels on which they broadcast their information, of course. And I'd like to thank Brother Zakir Mayet for availing himself during this time and for being here. So we thank you and we appreciate your presence, inshallah.
My brother, I must thank you. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for the effort that you are making. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for you and expand your path, and may your reward be in this world and the year after, inshallah.
Amen. Jazakallah khair, barakallah feek. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi.
Okay. Alhamdulillah, we're joined by one of our final guests for the night, Dr. Muhammed Vahed. Shall I just introduce yourself?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, jazakallah for having me on this program. My name is Dr. Muhammed Vahed. I'm a GP in general practice for the last 17 years. And as we all know, whether you're young, old, Palestine is in your blood, whether you're from Palestine or not. Alhamdulillah, from school days, going to varsity, post-varsity, I've always been trying to champion the cause of the Palestinian people, and as far as possible trying to read up on it, keep abreast with the news and things like that. But as everybody on this program will know, that Palestine is close to our heart, and we try our best, and inshallah Allah Ta'ala accept our efforts.
Ameen. Otherwise, your day, Doctor, it's been good.
Alhamdulillah, it's been a good day. Since the long weekend is coming up, has been a little bit quiet as well. But Alhamdulillah, it was a good day.
It's good to hear. So, inshallah, we'll now be starting with our first question. Just requesting that all the viewers share the link to their socials as well as their family, friends, and groups on WhatsApp and status, inshallah. So, without any further ado, let's jump straight into the first question. So, yourself as a doctor, you're someone who spend most of your time inside of hospitals and practices. So to you, what is your opinion, and how does it personally affect you, and what would you say on the destruction of the hospitals in Gaza, as we've seen they recently bombed the Al-Ahli hospital, and not just the hospital but all of those inside of it, the doctors and patients as well, without regard for their lives?
What do you say? You can just sit on this topic for an hour. Well, just to keep it short, we can just reiterate for the sake of argument, what the West have been saying about it. That is illegal. It's not. It goes against the laws of war. It goes against every belief that you can think of. Personally, for me, just calling it a humanitarian disaster or calling it illegal or something like that is just the tip of the iceberg. It's just, sugarcoating it. That is the worst type of atrocity that you could perpetrate on a people. Destruction of the hospital, a hospital or a masjid or even a church for that matter, even a synagogue for that matter, is supposed to be a place of refuge. And a hospital more so because you've got injured people there. And the purpose of destroying these things, as much as they may say they're not targeting civilians, they're not targeting healthcare workers, or they're not targeting patients, and they're saying that these are bases for Hamas and things like that, which has been disproven totally even by themselves. with all of those excuses, you just cannot. I read this somewhere, even if there was a Hamas leader sitting in the hospital, you cannot destroy a hospital. There are people there that can't fight back. There are people there that can't talk back. There are people there that are at the mercy of the aggressors. And the people that are going in there, unfortunately, are going in there because of the perpetration or the damage caused by the Israelis themselves. They're not there because of just fun and games. They're there because of serious injuries. And having worked in a hospital and you see people with broken legs and things like that, I personally feel what I've seen in my experience as a doctor in hospitals is mild compared to what the healthcare workers are seeing in Gaza. And anybody can tell me anything else, but I will not change from this. That the purpose of destroying the hospital by the Israelis is to make sure that the entire fabric, the entire society, or the entire Palestinian people are destroyed. So if a person is injured, and he's got a serious injury, he's got nowhere to go. So it's one more dead person for the Israelis. Sorry to sound so harsh, but that is exactly how I feel. So as far as possible, in any means possible, they want to eliminate and ethnically cleanse Gaza. So whether it be by bombs, destroying hospitals, killing doctors, making sure that diseases spread, these are all means of trying to make sure that people die. People are ethnically cleansed so that they can come and take over us.
Heard and seen now from our guest speaker, Dr. Muhammed Vahed, the destruction of hospitals and the damage and harm on human life really does affect him deeply, as of course he is someone who deals with human health on a day-to-day basis. And as you said, his heart lies close to those in Palestine. So, on to our next question. What would your message be to medical practitioners and staff throughout the world?
Well, as we've seen in South Africa, there's been a great mobilization of all medical personnel, be it from the auxiliary sciences or be it medical doctors directly or specialists. We've all written letters, we've all signed letters, we've all had holding vigils, especially in Cape Town, to try and call for a complete ceasefire, and that the targeting of hospitals is illegal in any law, whether it be national or international law. But alhamdulillah, so far a lot or majority of the healthcare workers in South Africa have signed on to this and are prepared to go to Gaza themselves. I am a volunteer for Gift of the Givers. We are waiting, inshallah, for some time or for some respite, and inshallah we can go in and serve the people there as well.
Inshallah. Allah accept you and all other doctors who have applied to go and assist the Mujahideen and the martyrs of Palestine, inshallah.
Ameen.
On to the next question. What would you say on the conditions of the citizens of Gaza having little to no access to basic necessities such as food, water, electricity and medical supplies?
What can one say? I'm sitting here with a cup of tea and biscuit, and that is a complete luxury for the people now in Gaza. Again, for me, it is something that is being weaponized, that is being used to try and make sure that more people die. The fact that you're not giving fuel, you're not giving electricity, you're not giving water, what does that breed? It breeds all types of diseases, all types of illnesses. If there's no food, there's hunger, people are malnourished. And it's much more easier for malnourished people, because of the immune systems being down, to contract more, let's call it simple diseases like a flu. And that flu can become dangerous for a person whose immune system is already weakened.
In your opinion, does the demonstrations such as marching and boycotting, in your opinion, do they have an impact on the world and on the situation currently unfolding in Gaza?
Oh yes, I firmly believe that. And one of the people that has convinced me about this is the political commentator Sami Hamdi. When he spoke, a question was posed to him is that are we not doing, or are we doing too little? And he mentioned that your little tweet or your little message on Facebook or your little flag or your little boycott is having a great impact on the broader picture. For example, Turkey. Initially, the president was very more subdued in his speeches, but recently he has come out quite strongly in what he's been talking about, that Israel is a terrorist state and so on and so forth. But that pressure or that reaction has only come about because of the pressure that his people through boycotts have been putting on him. People that haven't known about this Palestinian issue, or people who haven't heard about the other side of the story, in other words, they've only heard the Western side or the Israeli side of the story, are now beginning to see what it really means. And thirdly, most importantly for me, people are starting to pick up the Quran and read about Islam, reverting to Islam. And don't be fooled by the fact that you think that your tweet or your protest is not making any difference. Your public pressure on your leaders makes a huge difference. The Saudi Arabian government was about to sign the normalization deals as part of the Abrahamic Accords, and they stopped because of the pressure of the people on the ground, because of the pressure of these tweets. In fact, many places that I've read and heard, the US authority or the government have spoken to these people to try and bring the people into line and not to, bring about or talk about these things on social media. So social media has a brilliant and a very good, despite the efforts of Meta to stop people from talking about this issue, it has a very big impact on public opinion, and in turn public opinion puts pressure on governments.
And as for the last question, inshallah, after this question we'll be joined by our final guest who will be doing the closing of prayer. The last question is, in your opinion, what would you say on the ethics and morals of the Zionist regime?
It's a very ironical question because they don't have any ethics or morals. Early on in the war, where you saw babies being killed, and you get people like Joe Biden and Rishi Sunak of the United Kingdom, all saying that Israel is taking care of precision, or rather using precision bombing and not targeting civilians. But just by the number of children that are killed, how are they Hamas? A person that is in the neonatal unit, a baby that's in the neonatal unit, what affiliation does he have to Hamas or to PLO or to any organization for that matter? He's just been born, and all his struggle is to breathe, to live. And that also, the Zionists have blocked that. They'd stopped the electricity, and babies died. And they couldn't even get to those babies because the hospital was surrounded by the Israeli soldiers, and those corpses began to rot. Unfortunately, it seems as though I'm speaking quite clinically, but the pain and the suffering that you see on people's faces and the pain that you feel in your heart, it's unimaginable. Because I've seen babies suffer. I've seen babies on ventilators that couldn't breathe. Imagine this is happening to a baby out of, let's use the word, out of choice. Because the electricity is there, the oxygen is there, but just that the Israeli government that has no morals, that has no ethics, just stopped it unilaterally, just on no reason, just to say that Hamas is in the hospital, but they stopped all of that, and babies died, children died, women died. it's really, really heartbreaking.
It really is. I hope all of the viewers had a chance to hear what our dear guest, Dr. Muhammed Vahed, had to say, and allow this to sink into their not just their minds but their hearts as well, because it truly is a shame to see babies that are hardly even days old, some of them mere hours old, some of them days, some of them weeks, being bombed while being kept in incubators, and most of the time those incubators do not have access to electricity due to Israel cutting that electricity off. So we do thank you for being here with us today and for taking out some of your time to come here and speak on this issue. As many people we have asked and they were not able to make it due to their own obligations, but you took out your time to make it here, so we thank you for that.
Jazakallah for having me. I think this is a very important issue, and the more we speak about it, and the more we do not get lulled into a sense of that, okay, this is an ongoing thing, so we can carry on with life. But the more and more we speak about it, the more and more we keep it in the forefront, the more and more pressure will be brought upon or brought onto the powers that be that can stop this. But ultimately, the final decider is Allah Ta'ala, and our hope and our will and our du'as and our tawakkul is in Allah Ta'ala, that He will provide the final victory and that He will provide peace, happiness, contentment, even in the time of trouble, even in the time of suffering, that He will provide peace and contentment to the hearts of the people that are going through the trouble.
Jazakallah, inshallah. For the viewers, we do give a warm, of course, welcome and thank you to our guest speaker, Dr. Muhammed.